That's going to be a tough speech to follow. Real yapper, this guy. I was in the other room listening to Donald Trump on the side, and I just wanted to inform you guys, it's a victory. A total, complete victory in Iran. It's over. Never mind, actually, we're still continuing the war, it seems. But who knows? Maybe it'll be a victory tomorrow. Obviously, I was, I think, initially supposed to speak in a much larger room and potentially even debate a Zionist campus college professor here, but none of them wanted to do it. I don't know why. On whether or not occupied people have a right to resist. And I mean, yeah, they do, obviously, but you know, that would have been great for Jewish Insider. They could have gotten as many clips as they possibly can off of that one. Maybe continue the conversation for another week about whether or not politicians should endorse me as though I'm running for office. But we're going to be talking about Stanford University, Silicon Valley, tech, and imperialism, because we're in unique times. So let's start. I wrote a speech for you guys as well. Okay. First of all, I want to start off by saying thank you for having me. I'm honored. I want to begin my remarks with a quote from the writer Gore Vidal. Empires are restless organisms. They must constantly renew themselves. Should an empire start leaking energy, it will die. I think, looking at the state of affairs in the Middle East, we can safely say that the American empire is more than just leaking energy. Ever since the end of the Cold War, the United States has been the shot caller in world politics, the only superpower left standing. But if America won the Cold War, then why do we still have such a large military? It's a question I ask myself all the time. Why are we left with this national security state? This problem of a lack of a real enemy has vexed us ever since. The America is a restless organism. But that hasn't stopped us. We just started to pick on smaller and smaller guys, little guys all around the world, right? After the first Gulf War against Saddam Hussein's Iraq in 1991, it was Colin Powell who said, famously, "I'm running out of villains. I'm down to Castro and Kim Il-sung." And ever since he said those words, we've kept the war going. For decades, we've punished Iran, Iraq, Cuba, Palestine, North Korea, Venezuela, and many other nations. And we've kept the war going in a number of different ways. Perhaps the most important and unacknowledged has been the U.S. sanctions regime. A 2024 analysis by the Washington Post found that as many as a third of all countries in the world are under some kind of U.S. economic sanction. I recently visited the country of Cuba, where American sanctions and a trade embargo have been in place for over 6 decades. And I can tell you from what I saw that American sanctions are a deadly weapon, absolutely, excluding and financially penalizing smaller nations. According to a study published by The Lancet, the medical journal, the sanctions imposed by the United States or European Union were associated with 564,000 deaths per year between 1971 and 2001. Sanctions can take so many lives, and no one ever has to fire a gun or drop a bomb. But America does have guns. America also has bombs, and it has missiles, and expensive jets, and military bases all over the globe. And we pay for it instead of paying for housing, paying for education, paying for welfare, or literally anything else at all. And we have an arms industry that buys off Washington with lobbyists, and if we're being honest, buys off the country with decently paying industrial labor as well. Some of you might even end up working at some of these companies, given, we're at Stanford University today. But, as Gore Vidal put it, the American empire is leaking energy. Successive rounds of imperial misadventure have made us weak. So has the phase of capitalism that we're in, one that prioritizes speculation, financialization, in other words, ways of accumulating capital that leave less for common people than ever before. This way of life has weakened us. Our empire is coming to an end. And to that I say, thank God. To begin with, I believe that the American empire is a bad bargain for Americans. A lot of people might get mad at me and say, well, I'm a third worldist. As a matter of fact, it's actually pretty good in comparison to the third world. But It is. Now, it's objectively true that we do benefit in the imperial core. The empire benefits Americans in many ways. The dollar's reserve currency status, cheaper fuel costs, all for the good stuff from being the richest place on the planet. But our empire has a tax. Periodically, we send our own people off to other countries that die in a mission with no real strategic purpose. We have a limited and very expensive form of socialism for veterans, and even that is lackluster. And our empire requires that its capital be invested in weapons of war, far beyond any rational need. After all, every dollar spent on a bomb that will go out and blow out a school overseas is a dollar that's stolen from you, is a dollar that could have been spent on a school here. Could have gone to your roads, could have fixed your potholes, could have fixed our infrastructure, could have paid for healthcare, and yet, instead, that dollar goes to blowing up other countries overseas. It's pretty obvious to most people, especially you in this room. In the first week's new third Gulf War, fewer than a fifth of all Americans approved of it. That was before Donald Trump's MAGA cult decided that they were actually on board with it. In 2024, they voted for less inflation, and it's hard to see how a spike in the price of oil will deliver anything but historic inflation. The Trump people and all the other pro-war forces in government and media, well, they don't really have many options. The only way to make this all work is to lie. They have to buy TV networks, they have to buy Hollywood studios, they have to buy TikTok from China, and they have to flood the airwaves with their own propaganda, and they have to smear their enemies. And that's something I know quite a bit about, personally. But the pro-war, pro-empire forces in America, they have disadvantages too. The biggest one is manufacturing consent, to use an old phrase that may be falling out of fashion as of late. These days, almost nobody is bought in. People are very skeptical of mainstream narratives. And a big reason for why that's the case is the internet. In particular, the social media platforms that come from here, the heart of Silicon Valley. Ever since World War II, one of the greatest exports of the United States was our culture. I am a byproduct of that. I grew up in Turkey my whole life, and yet I sound American, I look American, I consumed American products my whole life growing up. I wanted to come here. I believed in the American dream until I got my first hospital bill, and then I was like, oh, yikes. But America's forces of cultural imperialism are also waning around the world. We have our TV networks, we have our Hollywood studios, our magazines, our books, and a huge chunk of all of that spread a pro-empire ideology all around the world. These days, it's also American-owned social media platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, that are the conveyor belts of world culture. But the catch is that despite running these platforms, there is more anti-empire sentiment rising than ever before. This is, I think, pretty ironic. The Spanish-American War, arguably the beginning of the American empire, was started in the yellow press. But now, the information people consume, especially since the start of Israel's post-October 7 genocide, the information people consume is guiding them towards anti-empire thoughts and beliefs. And a big part of that is because I think people's material conditions are unwinding and the contradictions are worsening. It's impossible not to notice, because it's certainly not because of the political education of the average American. They're not exactly very class conscious. Now, I think this kind of techno-feudalist control can also at the same time reinforce American hegemony. There's a lot of frivolous stuff that gets attention. For example, the world economy is about to collapse, and yet for the past week or so, if you've been on Twitter or if you've gone and read the Jewish Insider publication or numerous others, they're talking about me for some weird reason. They're talking about my Twitch stream and which candidates I associate with, which is ridiculous. But the most important information isn't reaching people. A recent Harvard-Harris poll found that, yes, while the war was unpopular, also 76% of voters think that America's winning the war. Unbelievable. It's cattle, really. Anyway, Americans in their hearts still believe we're invincible. Americans believe in American exceptionalism still. People are, I think, unprepared for the economic and political calamity that seems to be on its way. I want to end my remarks tonight with this. Silicon Valley's biggest companies rode the smartphone and social media to greater riches than any other sector of the economy anywhere else in the world. It appears that Silicon Valley's next phase will be all about artificial intelligence. Although AI could disrupt many industries and its collapse could pop a huge economic bubble, one of my biggest fears these days is about AI and the military. Increasingly, the new tech giants of our day, such as Palantir, yuck, OpenAI, Anthropic, they see their role as supporting the American empire. These companies help the military develop kill lists. They help intelligence agencies do spy work. And they, of course, do so much more than we even know about. Israel also utilized AI in their kill lists and their targeting systems as well, something that we are learning from them. The American empire is leaking energy, leaking the power that has made it work for over a century. But as you know, there are powerful forces, merchants of death, who are ready to profit and profit and profit, even as the empire dies. A challenge for your generation at Stanford will be to confront these forces head on. You know this better than me. You live here. They've probably been talking about Peter Thiel since orientation, I assume. But that makes your work even more important. Patriot Jose Marti once said of living in the United States that he had lived in the belly of the beast, and thus he knew it well. You all live in the belly of the beast. You know it well. Use the knowledge to fight it for a better world. Sound the alarm on techno-fascist danger. Stand up for the poor and the dispossessed. Free Palestine. Thank you.